following announcement has been paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Hello, ladies. Remember me? Let me talk to you, dummies.
It's now time
It's beer time. TikTok.
It's showtime!
for the longest running wrestling talk show in history.
We are huge. It's gonna be cool.
You're where it's at.
You smell like me.
Tune in each and every week.
You better keep listening, or I'll come out of your computer
And turn it on for you.
or else I'm gonna kick your stinking teeth in.
We've been known by a few names.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
The Interactive Interview,
Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Interactive interview.
The interactive interview. Interactive interview. The interactive interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio,
Interactive wrestling radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive radio.
Interactive wrestling radio.
Interactive wrestling radio.
The Blaze,
Blaze 1260 AM.
The Blaze.
The Blaze.
Blaze. The Blaze Rock.
and a lot of other names.
Weekend Weird of Wrestling. The Pile Driver. The Epa Wrestling Center.
3 Count Wrestling.
The Hour Slam.
But it's all one show, the Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter, dude. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And your host from day one,
By ignorance or arrogance.
James Walsh.
Wake up, sleepyheads.
Dr. Carol House.
It all starts
What a rush. Oh, Boomer Sooner.
Thank you very much.
I got 2 words for you. Thumbs down. Breaking necks and cashing checks. Burn. I've heard a lot about you guys.
Check it out. Get out of my face. You win!
But I'm desperately out of time!
So what you gonna do when Blaze-a-mania runs wild on you?
now.
All right, gang. Welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. My name is James Walsh, your master of ceremonies, and today we welcome the Impact Wrestling Before the Impact host as well as backstage interviewer. She is Gia Miller. For an exclusive interview, this is a lot of fun. I think you guys will like hearing her story and how she ended up in Impact Wrestling and what she's looking forward to this coming weekend as they present Slammiversary on pay-per-view, just in time for some available talent to truly be available. You never know who might show up at Impact Wrestling Slammiversary, and the only way to find out is by ordering the pay-per-view. Don't wait till the 11th hour, as the other Mean Gene Okerlund used to say. Order the pay-per-view now. We want to dedicate this episode of Interactive Wrestling Radio to a friend of the site, a gentleman who stayed in contact with us after our interview 5 years ago and who just passed away. If I have a Southern gentleman equal, it would be Del Wilkes, the Patriot, because our views were very much in line with one another. The only difference is I'm a Northeasterner with a big mouth, and he was able to say it in a more tactful way. Anyway, you slice it. Certainly am going to miss the man who wore the red, white, and blue, the Patriot. True legend and a great guy. Our condolences to his family, who he never was shy about sharing pictures of, and of course to his colleagues as well. Anyway, happy thoughts. Let's talk happy thoughts. Let's talk happy thoughts. Does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, you slice it. Let's talk about Slammiversary. Let's talk to Gia Miller. Don't forget again to hit that subscribe and like button and also the notifications bell. And check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for all your wrestling needs, including news and information and even the store to buy something and, of course, keep us going free and clear. So check out WrestlingEpicenter.com. Here we go.
Hey folks, this is the Patriot, Del Wilkes, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line right now is a young lady who has been a backstage interviewer and one of the hosts of BTI on Access TV. Impact Wrestling's Gia Miller. Are you with me, ma'am?
Yes, I am. Howdy. Thank you for having me.
Howdy. Thank you for having me. I love that accent. We'll get to that, though, in a second. So I always like to start out questions whenever I speak to, maybe it's my only sexist question of the interview, young ladies. What made you fall in love with the crazy, wild world of professional wrestling?
Oh, my goodness. I don't even think it's gender specific because this world is so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for anyone to get involved in it's a big jump. But I got into it as a kid. My dad watched it all the time, and actually, funnily enough, my mom was trying to convince my dad to be a wrestler before I was born because she wanted to be a valet so bad. But she bought his first tickets and everything. So my whole family loves it. And so I watched it with my dad growing up, and it was a big bonding activity was watching wrestling. And then I started playing sports as I got older, and I got into performing and all this stuff, and I just wanted to be on a bigger stage, so it led me straight to wrestling.
All right. Your road to Impact Wrestling seemed to be shorter than some. You got there pretty quick, which was, maybe it's just the right place, right time. But how did you end up signed with Impact Wrestling? Well, hold on. How did you end up appearing for Impact Wrestling long before you signed?
That is, you said it. Right place, right time. I had in the middle of nowhere in Alabama the week that Impact had come to Atlanta right before COVID.
Oh,
and Mike Jackson, who was my tag partner and is one of my trainers, I had mentioned, I think I'm going to go to the Impact show, but I'm just going to buy a ticket and sit in the crowd. Because at that point, I didn't even feel, even if I was backstage to help, I didn't have anything to contribute. I didn't feel like they would need me. And I also didn't want, because I knew people in the locker room, I didn't want favoritism or any sort of people. I didn't want that to come into play either. I didn't want to just show up, But he was my trainer. And he was like, well, I have been invited to wrestle on the show, so you come with me. And I was like, okay, I'll go with you. And we got there super, super early, and the first person I run into is Madison Rain. And we just strike up a conversation, and through our conversation, it kind of led to, maybe she could be an interviewer. And she talked to some people, some other people talked around, and then they asked me. I was supposed to actually audition that day, and then it just kind of fell through. Fast forward, I was in Ohio visiting Ace Austin for spring break. What a choice, right? And then COVID happened. Everything shut down when Impact decided they wanted to do tapings. The closed set tapings. They still didn't have an interviewer, and they found out I was with their talent. So they were like, okay, well, we know she's quarantined. Everything's good. Let's bring her in. And that was the beginning of the end, I guess.
Awesome. Well, one of the things I noticed when I first saw you on Impact is just how polished you are. What kind of a background do you have in broadcasting? Because you seem like you were ready, and it's like watching, inside the NFL. You guys were ready to roll.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means a lot. Because I had little to no experience. I was still in college at the time that I got the job, and I was only the beginning of that semester starting to take my on-camera broadcast classes. I'd taken lots of journalism, like journalistic values and media law and communications and all sorts of stuff. And then I was also a theater major in in college. So performance was a big thing that I was always really into. So I think that probably contributes to this. The polished look is I treat everything like a performance, and I love performing. So it was really great to have that jump from kind of okay, I'm in college, I'm working on this, I've graduated, and now I've got a job. I didn't have that scary moment, like, oh, well, I've got a degree, but what am I going to do with it?
There you go. I got a degree and I still don't do nothing with it. But
Ugh,
it's the way
that's
that's the way
trouble.
of the world. But what are you going to do? So on BTI, you have two great co-hosts. You have the very polished John Burton, and of course the GOAT. And if you don't believe him, ask him, Josh Matthews. What's it like working with those two guys for an hour a week?
They have been such great mentors of mine. They're so fun and easy to work with because, like I said, I had little to no experience, and they both have been working in this field for so long. And it would have been so easy for them to just kind of snub their nose at me, but they didn't. They were super welcoming, and we have great chemistry together. We work well together. It's always really fun filming those BTIs. There's no script for those. There's no teleprompter. We just rattle off and talk about wrestling and talk to each other, and that's what I love the most about that show.
Very good. I noticed this week, we mentioned the accent earlier, but this week you kind of let a few country phrases fly. And before this, I noticed that maybe I couldn't tell where you were from originally. I couldn't really place it where you're from. Did you knowingly kind of try to mask that accent?
Oh, for sure. It can be so distracting. And even when I'm doing media interviews, I'm not on camera or anything, I still try to neutralize it as best as I can because it also makes people really difficult. It's difficult to understand me sometimes when I get really excited. But yeah, they never told me oh, we don't want you to use your accent. But as a performer and as with my history of broadcast, I knew that, I need to tone it down at least a little bit, and it can't be too distracting. But I can still have a personality. And so that's why you see those, honestly, I'm a little shocked that not a lot of people have heard the like a horse to the barn analogy, but
that's exactly what I was thinking of when I said that yeah, the phrases. Okay, so one of my favorite things about the backstage interviewers is when you get the really intense guy who's screaming and shouting and sweating and all angry, and then they storm off, and then the camera keeps on you guys for that extra couple of seconds, and you just look puzzled, staring at the person that walked away. I don't know why, but I love when you guys do that, and everybody's guilty of it, even Mean Gene, the original Mean. I know you go by Mean Gia sometimes, but
of course, yeah.
But yeah, how much coaching goes into those backstage segments, and do you enjoy doing the backstage interview as well as the hosting gig?
I love it. I love doing the backstage interviewing. There's not a lot of heavy coaching that goes into that. They kind of just let me do what I do. Especially now at this point, they're like, we know that she is capable. We know we can trust her. And if they're like, hey, maybe say this instead, it's always just an improvement. There's they just kind of let me fly. They give me the mic and they say, okay, 3, 2, 1, let's go. Which it's so great because you've actually gotten to watch me grow as a host and as an interviewer over the past year. I think I've shown a lot of progression and a lot of improvement in the past year. So it's really cool how they just kind of let me go, and they're only ever there to lift me up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I was on the recent Press Pass podcast, which Gail Kim mentioned that you're training to make your in-ring debut for Impact Wrestling. Don't know how much she was supposed to say or anything like that, but how much you want to get into it, but how close are we to potentially seeing you get in the ring?
Don't hold your breath. I have a lot of work to do, and I've got a long way to go. But I've got the excitement and all the hard work within me ready to get out. So it's going to be a while until I feel that I'm at a level of performing at the TV level. But I'm hoping that it will be sooner rather than later.
All right, that's a great answer. And, of course, the big thing that's going to be happening this coming weekend at Slammiversary is the return of the live crowd. How happy are you guys to finally have that initial response, those people back in the crowds cheering you on?
Oh, my gosh. I cannot wait. This will actually be the first show that I've done since having a job with Impact that there will be a crowd. My entire time has been no crowds, no interaction, and I can't wait. Like, I don't know if I'll get to actually see the crowd because I don't typically get in the ring, but if I can find an excuse, I certainly will. It's so exciting to think about all the fans coming back, and like it's only going to get better from here because we're doing the closed set, and I'm excited for fans to see where we've been for the last year. Like, this set is super cool. This building is like a lot smaller than you actually think it is, and it has been a lot of fun to be there, and I'm excited for fans to see it, and I'm excited to see them.
Absolutely. And Slammiversary is typically one of Impact's biggest pay-per-views of the year, probably top two. That and Bound for Glory might be head-to-head, neck and neck. What is your thoughts going into the pay-per-view, and what matches might you be looking forward to seeing most?
This Slammiversary, it just gets bigger and bigger every year. I honestly didn't think anything could top last year's Slammiversary, but this one is going to be nuts. I'm the most excited about the return of the Ultimate X match. Mm-hmm. Like, I've never seen the structure. I've never been able to physically witness any sort of Ultimate X anything. So I'm super, super excited for that. It's going to be a great night.
Awesome. I'm going to throw this out there, just a question, word association for you, since you mentioned his name earlier. How about a word association for Ace Austin?
So much potential.
I agree. I completely agree. All right, so Impact Wrestling every week on Access TV. You guys are killing it. 3 hours, really, if you include before the Impact, and it really is a lot of fun to watch you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Any final thoughts as we head into the huge weekend next weekend?
Gosh, you don't want to miss Slammiversary. It's going to be huge. I don't even know what's going to happen, but I just know it's going to blow any expectation you have out of the water. So make sure that you get the pay-per-view. Don't miss it. I believe we'll be doing, well, actually, I don't want to say that we are doing the celebration because now that we'll have fans, I guess we don't need to do that anymore. But don't miss Slammiversary. It's going to be awesome, and thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it. Hey, before I hang up on you, or before you guys hang up on me, do you mind if I ask for one last favor?
Sure.
You probably already know what it is. Do you mind if I ask for a station ID, just saying this is Gia Miller, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter?
Sure. Hey, this is Gia Miller, and you are listening to the... Oh, I'm sorry. I just messed it up. Say it again.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter, and you are listening to Wrestling Epicenter. Okay, thank you. Hey, this is Gia Miller, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
The preceding announcement was paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
I've been listening, and if you like what you heard, I'm glad. If you didn't like what you heard, well, go fuck yourself.
Most people done hung up on me.
We had a lovely conversation.
What a show.
Oh, mercy, Daddy.
On your radio dial. Don't hang up. Bye-bye.